The glow of soft golden chandeliers filled the elegant dining room of Le Prestige, one of New York City's most exclusive restaurants. Gentle murmurs of conversation and the faint clinking of glasses created an ambiance of sophistication. Waiters in crisp uniforms moved gracefully between tables, balancing silver trays topped with champagne flutes and artistically plated dishes. Emma stood near the entrance, her hands fidgeting with the sleeves of her well-worn burgundy cardigan. Her nervousness was impossible to miss. The dim lighting only accentuated her unease as she glanced around at patrons dressed in designer clothes, exuding wealth and confidence. She smoothed her skirt, a modest piece she'd chosen for this blind date, and adjusted the necklace she'd inherited from her mother, a subtle piece with sentimental value but hardly flashy. Her best friend Lily had insisted this date would be life-changing. "He's different, Emma," Lily had said. "Just trust me and be yourself." But as Emma clutched the small note in her hand, "Table 9, his name is Ryan, don't overthink it," she couldn't help feeling like she was out of her depth. Across the room, Ryan sat alone at table 9. He wore a tailored gray blazer over a simple button-down shirt, exuding understated elegance. Despite his polished appearance, there was a subtle tension in his posture, as though he, too, wasn't entirely comfortable in this setting. For Ryan, tonight wasn't about impressing anyone with his status or reputation. He had spent years deflecting superficial attention, hoping one day to meet someone who would see beyond his wealth. That's why he had told his assistant to keep his last name and profession a secret. No background research, no mentions of his philanthropy work. Tonight, he was just Ryan, a man looking for something real. Emma took a deep breath, bracing herself, and walked toward table 9, not realizing this was the beginning of something that would change both their lives. Emma's footsteps echoed softly against the polished marble floor as she approached the host stand. Her palms were slightly damp from nerves, and she tightened her grip on the small note in her hand. "Reservation for Emma," she said, her voice wavering slightly. "Table 9. The host gave a polite smile and gestured toward the far end of the room. "Right this way." As Emma followed, she couldn't help but notice the refined atmosphere of the delicate crystal chandeliers, the soft hum of conversation, and the patrons dressed in evening gowns and tailored suits. It was a world she rarely ventured into. Her bookstore job didn't exactly provide many opportunities for fine dining. When they reached the table, she froze for a brief moment. Ryan was already seated, looking calm and composed as he absently adjusted the cuffs of his blazer. His gaze lifted as she approached, and his expression softened into a warm, welcoming smile. "Emma?" he asked, standing to greet her. She nodded, managing a small smile. "Yes, hi. You must be Ryan." "That's me," he replied, his voice steady and friendly. He gestured toward the chair opposite him. "Please, have a seat." Emma sat down, smoothing her skirt as she did. Her heart raced, and she struggled to keep her hands from trembling. "Sorry if I'm a bit late. I may have taken a few wrong turns on the way here." Ryan chuckled lightly, his smile easy and genuine. "You're right on time. And don't worry, this place can be a little intimidating if you're not used to it." Emma appreciated his candor. She glanced around again, feeling slightly out of place in the lavish setting. "That obvious, huh?" she said with a self-deprecating laugh. "Not at all," Ryan assured her. "I just know what it's like to feel like you don't belong somewhere." His words caught her off guard, but she quickly brushed it aside as the waiter arrived, presenting them with menus and offering wine. Emma hesitated before ordering sparkling water. Ryan ordered the same, and his subtle choice put her at ease. "So," Ryan began, leaning slightly forward, "tell me about yourself, Emma." "Oh, she stammered, feeling the familiar knot of self-doubt rise in her chest. "There's not much to tell, really. I manage a bookstore, vintage books, mostly. It's nothing glamorous, but I love it." Ryan's expression brightened. "A bookstore? That sounds incredible. I've always had a thing for stories." Emma's lips curved into a genuine smile. "Really? Most people I meet just see books as, well, outdated." "Not me," Ryan said earnestly. "Books have a way of connecting us to the past, to ideas and to each other. They're timeless." Emma felt herself relaxing for the first time that evening. "Exactly. That's what I love about them. There's so much life in the pages, even if the stories are centuries old." Ryan nodded, his gaze never leaving hers. "And what's your favorite story?" Emma paused, considering the question. "There's this book called The Night Library. It's about a young girl who finds solace in an old magical library after losing her mother. It's a little sad, but also beautiful." Ryan's smile softened. "That sounds like it means a lot to you." "It does," she admitted, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. "My mom used to read it to me when I was little. After she passed, books became my escape." Ryan's expression turned serious, his respect for her growing. "I'm sorry you went through that, Emma. But it's amazing how you've found a way to turn that into something positive." Before Emma could respond, the waiter returned with their drinks and appetizers. As the conversation flowed, Emma found herself drawn to Ryan's calm demeanor and genuine interest in her life. Ryan, for his part, was captivated by Emma's unpretentious charm. She wasn't trying to impress him or win him over, she was just herself. It was refreshing, especially for someone like Ryan, who was used to being judged for his wealth and status. As dinner progressed, Ryan shared bits about his work in community initiatives, carefully omitting the fact that he oversaw a multi-million-dollar foundation. "I help support local charities and small businesses," he said. "It's fulfilling, but sometimes I wish I could do more directly." "That sounds wonderful," Emma replied, her admiration evident. "It must feel good to make such a difference." "It does," Ryan said, though a flicker of hesitation crossed his face. "But sometimes people don't see the person behind the work. They just see other things." Emma tilted her head, curious. "What do you mean?" Ryan gave a small shrug. "Let's just say people tend to make assumptions when they know certain details about you." Emma nodded knowingly. "I get that. People often assume I'm just a quirky bookworm without realizing there's more to me. It's frustrating." Ryan smiled. "Exactly." As dessert arrived, Ryan couldn't help but notice how easy it was to talk to Emma. She wasn't caught up in the superficial trappings of wealth or prestige. She simply enjoyed the conversation for what it was. When the check came, Emma instinctively reached for it, but Ryan discreetly handed his card to the waiter before she could see the total. "My treat," he said with a kind smile. Emma hesitated, but eventually relented. "Thank you. This has been really nice." Ryan's smile widened. "It has. I'd love to do this again if you'd be interested." Emma's cheeks flushed slightly as she nodded. "I'd like that." As they stepped outside into the cool night air, Emma felt lighter than she had in months. For the first time, she allowed herself to hope that maybe, just maybe, this could be the start of something special. The following evening, Emma arrived at a small cafe tucked away in a quiet corner of the city. It was a world apart from the elegance of Le Prestige, warm, inviting, and unassuming. The faint sound of jazz music played in the background, and the soft lighting created a cozy, intimate atmosphere. Emma clutched a second-hand leather-bound book wrapped in brown paper, a gift she had chosen for Ryan after their conversation the night before. She felt a mix of nervousness and anticipation as she stepped inside, her eyes quickly scanning the room. Ryan was already there, seated at a small corner table near the window. He wore a simple navy sweater and jeans, his usual air of sophistication replaced with an approachable warmth. His face lit up the moment he saw Emma. "Emma," he greeted warmly, standing to pull out her chair. "I'm glad you came." "Of course," she replied, her smile shy but genuine. She slid the wrapped book across the table toward him. I brought you something. After what you said about loving stories, I thought you might like this." Ryan blinked in surprise, his gaze flickering between Emma and the gift. "You didn't have to do that," he said softly, carefully unwrapping the paper. His expression brightened as he revealed an old edition of the Night Library. "I found it at my bookstore," Emma explained. "It's one of my favorites, and I thought you might enjoy it." Ryan ran his fingers over the worn cover, his smile growing. "Emma, this is incredible, thank you. I can't believe you remembered." Emma shrugged, a faint blush coloring her cheeks. "I guess I wanted to share something that means a lot to me." Their coffees arrived, and as they settled into their drinks, the conversation flowed easily. Emma found herself opening up in ways she rarely did with strangers. "So, a bookstore," Ryan said, stirring his coffee. "How did that happen?" Emma chuckled, a hint of nostalgia in her tone. "I've always loved books. My mom used to read to me every night when I was little. After she passed away, books became my escape. They made me feel safe." Ryan's expression softened, his admiration for her growing. "That must have been tough, losing her so young." "It was," Emma admitted, her gaze lowering to her cup. "But in a way, books helped me keep her close. I even wanted to be a writer once, but life got in the way. I had to drop out of college when my dad got sick, and since then, I've just been working to make ends meet." Ryan leaned forward, his voice gentle. "That doesn't mean it's too late. You could still write, Emma. You've got so much heart, you'd be amazing." Emma smiled faintly, though a flicker of doubt lingered in her eyes. "Maybe someday. Right now, I'm just trying to keep things together." "And what about dreams?" Ryan asked, his gaze steady. "If you could do anything, what would it be?" Emma hesitated, as if speaking her dreams aloud might make them too real. "I've always wanted to open my own bookstore, a cozy place where people could lose themselves in stories the way I did, but, well, it's not exactly practical." "Well, not?" Ryan asked, his tone sincere. Emma shrugged, letting out a small laugh. "Because rent in this city is insane for starters, and because people don't exactly line up to buy books anymore. It's just a silly idea." Ryan shook his head. "It's not silly, Emma. It's inspiring, and I believe you could make it happen." Emma's chest tightened at his words, the belief in his voice stirring something she had buried long ago. "Thank you," she said softly. "What about you?" she asked, eager to shift the focus. "What do you do?" Ryan hesitated briefly before replying. "I work in philanthropy," he said carefully, "helping charities and supporting local businesses. It's fulfilling, but sometimes complicated." Emma tilted her head curiously. "Complicated how?" "Let's just say people sometimes judge you based on appearances or assumptions," Ryan replied. "It's hard to feel like you're truly seen for who you are." Emma nodded, understanding more than she let on. "Yeah, I get that. People have a way of seeing only what they want to see, not what's underneath." Their eyes met, and for a moment, it felt like they were talking about something far deeper than work or societal judgment. The conversation drifted into lighter topics, favorite books, travel dreams, and even embarrassing childhood stories. Ryan made Emma laugh with a tale of accidentally dropping a tray of hors d'oeuvres at a fancy gala, while Emma amused him with her story of getting locked in the bookstore during a blackout. What struck Ryan most was how genuine Emma was. She wasn't trying to impress him or play a role, she was simply herself, kind, humble, and sincere. As the cafe began to empty and the night wore on, Ryan leaned back in his chair, smiling at Emma. "Tonight's been wonderful," he said. "It really has," Emma agreed, resting her chin on her hand. "Thank you for sharing so much with me, Ryan. It means a lot." He hesitated, then asked, "Would you like to do this again sometime?" Emma's heart skipped a beat, but she smiled and nodded. "I'd love that." As they said their goodbyes and Emma walked into the cool night air, she clutched her coat tightly, feeling a warmth she hadn't felt in years. Ryan watched her go, his heart lighter than it had been in a long time, and wondered if this was the start of something extraordinary. The following evening, Emma arrived at a small cafe tucked away on a quiet street corner, her nerves fluttering like the leaves swirling in the crisp autumn breeze. The cozy space was a stark contrast to the grandeur of Le Prestige. The soft glow of Edison bulbs lit the room, and the faint notes of jazz played in the background. Ryan had arrived early and was seated at a table near the back. His casual attire, a dark sweater and jeans, made him look effortlessly approachable. When Emma walked in, he stood, a smile spreading across his face. "Emma?" he greeted warmly. "Hi, Ryan," she replied, her cheeks tinged with a faint blush as she removed her scarf. Ryan gestured toward the seat across from him. "I hope you don't mind. I ordered us some coffee black for me, but I wasn't sure what you'd like, so I went with something safe. A latte?" "That's perfect," Emma said, taking her seat. Once they settled in, Ryan slid a small, neatly wrapped package across the table toward her. Emma blinked in surprise, glancing at the package and then at him. "What's this?" she asked, her fingers hesitantly brushing the brown paper. "It's just something small," Ryan said with a sheepish smile. "I remember you mentioned your love for books, so I thought you might appreciate it." Emma carefully unwrapped the package, revealing an old, well-loved copy of The Night Library. Her breath hitched as she ran her fingers over the worn cover. "Ryan, this is incredible," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "How did you even find this?" "I might have had some help," he admitted with a playful shrug. "But it seemed fitting, considering how much it meant to you." Emma smiled, genuinely touched by his thoughtfulness. "This is the kindest thing anyone's done for me in a long time. Thank you." Ryan waved it off. "It's nothing, really. I just wanted to give you something meaningful." As the coffee arrived, their conversation flowed naturally. Ryan asked about Emma's work at the bookstore, and she spoke animatedly about her passion for connecting customers with stories that resonated with them. "I've always loved the idea of running my own bookstore someday," she admitted, her hands wrapped around her coffee cup. "Something small and cozy, with a little reading nook for customers. It's a silly dream, I know." "It's not silly at all," Ryan said earnestly. "It sounds like a beautiful idea. What's stopping you?" Emma hesitated, her gaze dropping to the table. "Money, mostly. I barely make enough to keep up with rent. And then there's the fear. What if I fail?" Ryan leaned forward slightly. "You'll never know unless you try. And from what I've seen so far, you've got the passion and determination to make it work." Emma smiled, her cheeks flushing at his encouragement. "You're really good at making people believe in themselves. You know that?" Ryan chuckled softly. "I try. What about you? What keeps you motivated?" Emma's smile faded slightly as she considered his question. "I guess it's the memories. My mom always believed in chasing dreams, no matter how impossible they seemed. After she passed, I promised myself I'd try to honor that, but sometimes life just gets in the way." Ryan listened intently, his expression thoughtful. "Your mom sounds like an incredible woman." "She was," Emma said quietly, her voice tinged with both sadness and fondness. Turning the conversation back to Ryan, she asked, "What about you? What made you choose your line of work?" Ryan hesitated briefly, carefully choosing his words. "I've always been passionate about helping people, supporting local communities, small businesses. It's fulfilling in a way that goes beyond money. It feels real." Emma nodded, her admiration evident. "That's amazing. I wish more people thought that way." Ryan gave a small, self-deprecating smile. "It's not always easy. Sometimes people make assumptions about me, about my intentions before they get to know who I really am. Emma tilted her head, intrigued. Why would anyone assume anything bad about you? You seem like one of the most genuine people I've met. Ryan's gaze met hers, and for a moment, there was a flicker of vulnerability in his eyes. Let's just say people tend to focus on what's visible on the surface instead of taking the time to look deeper. Emma nodded thoughtfully. I can understand that. I think we all have layers that people don't always bother to uncover. Their conversation shifted to lighter topics, and before long they were laughing over childhood stories. Emma shared an embarrassing memory about getting locked inside the bookstore during a power outage, while Ryan told a story about volunteering at an animal shelter and accidentally walking a cat instead of a dog. As the cafe began to empty, Emma found herself feeling a warmth she hadn't experienced in a long time. Ryan wasn't just kind, he was attentive, thoughtful, and refreshingly genuine. This was really nice, Emma said as they stepped outside into the chilly night air. It was, Ryan agreed, his hands tucked into his pockets. I'm glad we did this. Emma hesitated, her heart pounding as she looked up at him. I'd like to see you again, if that's okay. Ryan's face lit up with a smile. I'd like that too. As Emma walked home, clutching the old book he'd given her, she couldn't help but feel that this connection, unexpected and fragile as it was, might just be the start of something extraordinary. It had been weeks since Emma and Ryan had started seeing each other regularly. Their connection grew deeper with each meeting. They talked about everything, dreams, fears, and even the little things that made life interesting. Ryan had become a steady presence in Emma's life, someone she felt she could truly trust. And though Emma often wondered why someone as polished and kind as Ryan would be interested in her, she decided to silence those doubts. With him, she felt seen, not just for what she did, but for who she was. But Ryan carried a secret he hadn't yet shared. Despite his growing feelings for Emma, the fear of how she might react to the truth kept him silent. He told himself he needed to wait for the right moment, but deep down, he wasn't sure it would ever come. One rainy afternoon, Emma finished her shift at the bookstore and decided to stop by the cafe where they had shared their second date. The rain pattered against the windows as she ordered a latte and waited for Ryan, who had texted her earlier, saying he'd join her soon. As Emma sipped her drink, her gaze wandered to the magazine rack by the counter. Her eyes caught on a glossy cover, and her heart skipped a beat. There, staring back at her, was Ryan's face. Her breath hitched as she picked up the magazine, scanning the headline, Ryan Whitmore, the billionaire philanthropist, redefining charity. Emma froze, disbelief washing over her. She flipped through the pages, skimming the article. It detailed Ryan's vast wealth, his role as CEO of a global foundation, and the luxurious life he led, one he had carefully hidden from her. Her mind raced. Was everything they'd shared a lie? Had he been pretending to care about her simple life while secretly living in a world of unimaginable privilege? When Ryan arrived, shaking off the rain from his coat, he spotted Emma sitting at their usual corner table. Her face was pale, her expression unreadable. "Emma?" he greeted warmly, but his smile faltered when he noticed the magazine on the table between them. She looked up, her voice steady but tinged with hurt. "Ryan, who are you?" Ryan's stomach dropped. "Emma, I can explain." "Explain what?" she interrupted, her voice rising slightly. "That you're not who you said you were? That this whole time you've been lying to me?" "I wasn't lying," Ryan said quickly, sitting down across from her. "I just didn't tell you everything. I wanted you to get to know me for who I am, not for what I have." Emma shook her head, anger and betrayal bubbling inside her. "So you thought lying by omission was the best way to do that?" Ryan's hands clenched into fists on the table. "It wasn't like that. Emma, you don't understand what it's like to have people see your wealth before they see you. I didn't want that with you." Emma's voice cracked as she replied. "But you didn't trust me enough to tell me the truth. Do you know how humiliating this feels? I've shared everything with you, my struggles, my dreams, while you sat there knowing you live in a world I can't even imagine." Ryan's chest tightened. "I didn't mean to hurt you, Emma. I care about you more than I can say. I was just scared." "Scared of what?" she asked, her voice softening slightly. "Scared that you'd walk away," he admitted, his gaze dropping to the table. "That you'd think I was just some rich guy who couldn't understand your life." Emma's heart ached at his words, but the sting of betrayal lingered. "Ryan, I never cared about what you had or didn't have. All I wanted was honesty, and you couldn't give me that." Ryan reached for her hand, but she pulled away. The pain in her eyes was enough to shatter him. "Emma, please, don't let this ruin what we have." She stood abruptly, cutting him off. "I need some time to think." Her voice wavered as she added, "I don't even know if I can trust you anymore." Without another word, Emma grabbed her coat and walked out into the rain, leaving Ryan sitting alone with the magazine that had unraveled everything. That night, Emma sat by her apartment window, staring out at the rain. Her mind replayed every moment she'd shared with Ryan, now tinted with doubt. Had he been genuine? Or had it all been a facade? Meanwhile, Ryan sat in his empty office, the weight of regret pressing heavily on his chest. He'd wanted to protect their connection, but in doing so, he'd jeopardized everything he held dear. The following days passed slowly, each one heavier than the last. Emma tried to focus on her work, but her thoughts kept drifting to Ryan. She missed him, the way he listened, the way he made her feel valued, but the hurt lingered. Ryan, on the other hand, wrestled with his own fears and insecurities. He wanted to fix things, to prove to Emma that his feelings were real, but he didn't know how. Finally, after days of silence, he made a decision. One evening, Emma returned home to find an envelope slipped under her door. Her name was written on the front in Ryan's familiar handwriting. With trembling hands, she opened it and unfolded the letter. Emma unfolded the letter, her hands trembling slightly. She hesitated before reading, her heart pounding as her eyes landed on Ryan's handwriting, neat and deliberate. "Dear Emma, I've replayed our last conversation in my mind more times than I can count, and I know I hurt you. For that, I am truly sorry. When I first met you, I was drawn to your warmth, your sincerity, and the way you see the world. You made me feel like I could finally be myself, not the version of me everyone expects. That's why I didn't tell you about my background. It wasn't because I didn't trust you, it was because I didn't trust myself. I was afraid that once you knew, everything between us would change. But I see now that hiding the truth was the real mistake. I didn't give you the chance to prove what I already knew about you, that you're not like anyone else I've ever met. You care about people for who they are, not for what they have. And in my fear of losing you, I created the very distance I was trying to avoid. Emma, I care about you deeply. The moments we've shared have been some of the most genuine and meaningful in my life. I know I broke your trust, and I can't expect you to forgive me overnight. But if there's even a small part of you that believes in what we had, I'd like the chance to make things right. Not with words, but with actions. You once told me about your dream of opening your own bookstore. I believe in that dream, and I believe in you. I'd love to help make it a reality, not as an apology, but as a partnership. Because I want to be part of your life, Emma, if you'll let me. I'm not perfect, and I know I've made mistakes, but my feelings for you are real, and they haven't changed. I just hope you'll give me the chance to show you the person I want to be, the person you already saw in me, before I even realized it myself. Yours, Ryan. Emma's vision blurred as tears welled up in her eyes. She set the letter down and pressed her hands to her face, her emotions a whirlwind of hurt, longing, and something else she couldn't quite name. Ryan's words were raw and vulnerable, and they struck a chord deep within her. She could feel the sincerity in every line, but the pain of his deception still lingered. That night, Emma sat by her window, the letter clutched in her hands. The city lights twinkled in the distance, and the rhythmic hum of traffic below provided a strange kind of comfort. She thought about the Ryan she had come to know, the man who listened to her dreams, who brought her the night library, who made her laugh like she hadn't in years. Was he still that man despite his secret? Emma's thoughts drifted to her own insecurities. Had she pushed Ryan away not just because of his deception, but because she didn't believe someone like him could genuinely care for someone like her? She spent the next day wrestling with her emotions. By evening, she found herself standing outside the cafe where they had shared so many conversations. She wasn't sure what she was looking for, closure, perhaps, or maybe a chance to see if there was still something worth saving. More than anything, she wanted to feel like she was doing the right thing. When Ryan entered the cafe that evening, he looked hesitant, almost vulnerable. His usual calm demeanor was replaced with uncertainty as he approached her. "Emma," he said softly, sliding into the seat across from her. "Thank you for meeting me." Her gaze met his, searching for something, truth, perhaps, or a sign that this wasn't just another polished performance. "I read your letter," she said quietly. "And?" he asked, his voice tight with hope and fear. Emma took a deep breath. "You hurt me, Ryan. I opened up to you in ways I don't with most people, and finding out you weren't honest, it felt like everything we had was a lie." Ryan's face fell, but he didn't interrupt. He let her continue. "But," Emma added, her voice softening, "I also know how hard it is to let people see the real you, and after reading your letter, I believe you when you say you didn't mean to hurt me." Ryan leaned forward slightly, his hands resting on the table. "Emma, I'd do anything to rebuild your trust. I'll take it one day at a time if that's what it takes." Emma hesitated, the weight of the moment pressing on her. Then slowly, she nodded. "I'm willing to try, Ryan, but I need honesty completely. No more secrets." Ryan's expression softened with relief. "You have my word." For the first time in days, Emma allowed herself to smile, a tentative but genuine smile that carried the hope of a new beginning. A week later, Emma was busy shelving books at the store when she heard the familiar chime of the front door. She glanced up, expecting a customer, but her breath caught when she saw Ryan standing there, holding a small bouquet of sunflowers. "Hi," he said softly, his voice uncertain but hopeful. Emma's lips curved into a tentative smile. "Hi." Ryan stepped closer, his gaze sweeping the cozy space filled with shelves of vintage books. "This is it, huh? Your happy place." She nodded, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear. "It is. I've spent so many hours here that it feels more like home than my actual apartment." Ryan's eyes softened. "It's beautiful, just like you said it would be." Emma blushed slightly, unsure of what to say. "So, what brings you here today?" Ryan offered her the bouquet, his hand brushing against hers as she took it. "I wanted to see you, and to tell you something." Emma set the flowers on the counter and turned to face him. "I'm listening." Ryan hesitated, gathering his thoughts. "I've been thinking a lot about what you said about trust and honesty. You're right. I let my fear get in the way of what we had, and I hate that I hurt you. But I want you to know I'm done hiding. I want to be completely honest with you, Emma, because you're the most important person in my life." Her heart swelled at his words, but she kept her expression calm. "No more secrets?" He shook his head. "No more secrets. I promise." Emma studied him for a long moment, searching his eyes for any trace of doubt or insincerity. She found none. "Okay," she said softly. "I believe you." Relief washed over Ryan's face, and he took a cautious step closer. There's one more thing I want to say." "What's that?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Ryan reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a neatly folded piece of paper. "This is a business proposal. I know you've always dreamed of owning your own bookstore, and I want to help make that happen. Not because I think you need me to, but because I believe in you." Emma unfolded the paper with trembling hands. It detailed an investment partnership, one where she would have full creative control over the store while Ryan provided the financial backing. Her eyes filled with tears as she looked back at him. "Brian, I don't know what to say. This is incredible, but I can't take your money." "It's not a gift," Ryan said gently. "It's a partnership. You've inspired me with your passion and your vision. I want to help you build something amazing. But more than that, I want to be part of your life, Emma, in whatever way you'll let me." Emma's lips quivered as she tried to find the right words. "This means so much to me, Ryan. But you have to know I don't need the money or the proposal to say yes to you. I just need you." Ryan's smile was radiant as he stepped closer, cupping her face in his hands. "You have me, Emma. Always." Their lips met in a kiss that felt like a promise of trust, love, and a new beginning. As they pulled apart, Emma grinned up at him. "So, about that proposal, can we add a small reading nook with comfy chairs?" Ryan laughed, his heart lighter than it had been in years. "Anything you want." The crisp autumn morning was perfect for a grand opening. A soft breeze carried the scent of freshly fallen leaves, mingling with the aroma of coffee wafting from the small cafe down the block. Outside, a charming little shop nestled on a quiet Brooklyn corner, a handmade sign proudly read, "The Story Nook." Inside, Emma stood behind the counter, her heart fluttering with both excitement and nerves. The shelves were filled with hand-picked books, each carefully chosen for its story and meaning. A cozy reading nook with plush chairs sat near the back, where soft golden light spilled through the windows. The first few customers began trickling in, friends, neighbors, and even a few loyal patrons from her old bookstore. The atmosphere was warm and inviting, filled with quiet murmurs and the occasional sound of laughter. Emma glanced toward the door, wondering when Ryan would arrive. She didn't have to wait long. The familiar chime of the bell announced his presence, and when she looked up, her breath caught. Ryan stood in the doorway, holding a bouquet of sunflowers and wearing that same warm smile that had first put her at ease. He was dressed simply, in a sweater and jeans, blending effortlessly into the casual atmosphere of the shop. He crossed the room toward her, weaving through the small crowd. "For the owner," he said, handing her the bouquet. Emma smiled, taking the flowers. "You didn't have to bring these." Ryan grinned. "Of course I did. Today's a big day." "It is," she agreed, her eyes shining with gratitude. As the shop filled with more visitors, Emma and Ryan worked side by side to greet customers and make sure everyone felt welcome. It felt natural, like they were a team, not just in love, but in life. Later in the afternoon, when the crowd had thinned, Ryan gestured toward the small stool behind the counter. "You should say a few words. This is your moment." Emma hesitated, feeling a flush of nerves. "I'm not good at speeches." Ryan gave her an encouraging nod. "Just speak from the heart. That's always been your strength." Taking a deep breath, Emma stepped onto the stool, her hands clasped tightly in front of her. The room quieted as the small crowd turned their attention to her. "Hi, everyone," she began, her voice a little shaky at first. "Thank you so much for coming today. This bookstore, it's been a dream of mine for as long as I can remember. But it's not just my dream. It's a place where I hope all of you can find stories that inspire, comfort, or even challenge you. And there's one person I need to thank more than anyone," Emma continued, her gaze shifting to Ryan. "Ryan, you've been my biggest supporter, believing in me even when I doubted myself. You've shown me what it means to trust, to love, and to take chances. I wouldn't be standing here today without you." Ryan's eyes glistened, and he offered her a small nod, his heart full. The room erupted into applause as Emma stepped down, her cheeks flushed but her smile radiant. Ryan pulled her into a hug, whispering, "I'm so proud of you." That evening, after the last customer had left, Emma locked the door and turned to find Ryan sitting in one of the reading nook chairs, flipping through a book. "Tired?" he asked with a knowing smile. "Little," she admitted, sitting across from him, "but mostly happy." Ryan closed the book and leaned forward. "This place is incredible, Emma. It's everything you dreamed it would be." She smiled, leaning back in her chair. "I still can't believe it's real, but you know what? It feels perfect." Ryan reached across the small table, taking her hand in his. "That's because you built it, and I'm just lucky to be part of your story." Emma squeezed his hand, her heart full. "You're more than part of it, Ryan. You're the best chapter yet." As they sat together in the quiet of the shop, surrounded by shelves of stories and the promise of new beginnings, Emma knew this wasn't just the end of one dream. It was the start of a life filled with love, trust, and the endless possibilities of their shared future.